Our last running back that we're going to go over that we are not seeing eye to eye right now is Gus Edwards, my current highest drafted player in best ball right now. I am all in on him at his 121 running back 36 price tag. I love me some Gus Edwards. Coming off his career highs in games played, 17, starts 9, rushing yards 810, rushing touchdowns 13, the big point here. And of course, his total rushing attempts at 196. Those 13 touchdowns were third most among running backs, second most in the AFC. I think that is just a precursor to what we're going to see this year with the Chargers. I am super excited for this run game with Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman. There's not a lot to be excited about with the offense overall that these guys run, but the running game is one of them. Their quotes and signing Gus, Joe Hortitz coming over from the Ravens, who clearly had some experience with Gus Edwards, says specifically with him, I've seen him come back from adversity, grind, be physical, continue to play the brand of football he's always played. He is the identity that we want to bring here. He's the bell cow. He's the goal line guy, the finisher. And I look at this roster, I'm not sure there's anybody really in his way to actually being a true bell cow, even if he has only had 189 as his career high carries. But in this Roman scheme, he's hit 5 yards per carry in 4 of 4 seasons in this offense. And Greg Roman, sure, pass game, 28th or lower in pass attempts in 9 of 10 seasons. 7 of 10 seasons, he was second to last or last in pass attempts. Doesn't make me very bullish on the receiving products here in Justin Herbert overall. But then you look at the flip side of that. It's because the run games have been so damn dominant. Top 10 in rush attempts every single year, 10 for 10, top 3 in 7 of those 10 years. Rush yards, 10 for 10 in terms of total yards from the running backs. Top 3, again, 7 of 10 seasons for rushing yardage. He was number 1 in rushing yardage in 4 of his 10 seasons, calling plays. And then rushing touchdowns, 7 of 10 seasons, top 10. Top 5 in 5 of those 10 seasons. It is an elite run scheme. And this line ranked top 12 by PFF coming in, but they probably have a lot of room to vault up there with Joe Alt coming in, Rashawn Slater on the other side, maybe the best tackle duo if Alt pans out in the entire league here. So given this run heavy nature, and you look at, okay, who's he competing with for the best potential ground pie in the NFL? JK Dobbins. The success stories of Achilles backs is Donta Foreman 2 years later. And I mean, it's Donta Foreman. He hasn't really done that much. And that's the success story. So I'm not ready. As much I hope the best for JK Dobbins. I love the player. You're, of course, rooting for the guy. But I'm not sitting here buying him at all with that Achilles injury, given the track record. Kimani Vidal, okay, yeah, I'll draft him, especially if I don't get Gus Edwards. I am intrigued to see how it plays because I do think this is such a valuable situation. But we're talking about a round 6 running back. We haven't even seen a single positive blurb yet in all of this offseason camp with Gus Edwards resting a shoulder injury. How have we not seen anything about Kimani Vidal yet? Maybe the beat writers are just garbage, or maybe the guy just isn't standing out at all. So I see a guy in Gus seeing 60 to 65% of the work in an elite rushing scheme behind a top 12 at minimum offensive line in the league, a proven touchdown scorer. I think there's upside for 1,000 yards on the ground and 12 to 15 plus touchdowns. Because yes, I get it's not like the Ravens attack that was generating all those opportunities, but in all of Jim Harbaugh's years and 4 of those 5 seasons, they were top 11 in total points scored, and a ton of those did come on the ground. So the only risk to me is if they trade for a Khalil Herbert, a Dameon Pierce, maybe they sign Samaje Perine. There is some risk that somebody else could be brought in here. And yeah, that would really suck for Gus Edwards and all the stock I have in him. But if this backfield remains as it is currently constructed, again, Vidal would have to significantly outperform what typical round 6 rookies do. And could he? Maybe. I just love the bet on Gus Edwards, as hideous as it is, 120 for 15-ish touchdowns. It reminds me, and this is going to probably sound a little ridiculous because there's such different players and it's such different types of schemes, but it kind of reminds me of the Raheem Mostert situation last year where he was going 120-ish and ends up scoring 18 touchdowns. Again, I know that there's such different players, but it's, to me, a great run scheme. It's different style of run scheme, yes, but great run schemes, good touchdown scores, and very little competition for that goal line goal. In fact, I'd say Mostert faced much more grave competition between Achane and Jeff Wilson last year. So I think there's a lot of unsexy upside to Gus Edwards, and I think he could end up really, really outproducing this 120 price tag.
There's an outcome where he does, but just kind of thinking about like the path to success for Gus Edwards, it's him consolidating the rushing work and scoring a bunch of touchdowns. And the first question I have is he good enough to consolidate the rushing work? Like I like you can diss like the Kimani Vidal and JK Dobbins all you want. And I have personally, like I think Vidal is being overdrafted, and Dobbins, like you said, more likely than not, just a dud after 2 massive injuries in the last 3 years. But I mean, at the end of the day, we've seen just total zeros and total nobodies get rushing work in the NFL because the top running back just simply isn't like someone who's talented enough or profiles to consolidate all the touches and be a bell cow. And I guess the reports about him like being the bell cow back coming out of the front office is, I think it is also partially a result of I don't agree with it, and I think it's partially a result of me having a fundamentally different understanding of what a bell cow back is, because Edwards is a total zero in the receiving game. He was, last season was his career best in terms of his receiving production, and it was, I think, 12 receptions for 180 yards, like, and it was by far his like best season in his career. So bell cow back isn't something that works in my mind with the name Gus Edwards, just because he doesn't offer anything in terms of a receiving output. And then moving on to the touchdowns, like I understand he will probably handle the majority of the looks at the goal line, but I don't know if this offense is good enough to provide him with the opportunities to do so. That's just like, it's not something you can debate statistically. It's just kind of how you fundamentally feel about the quality of this Chargers offense. I'm not entirely sure if they will provide him with the opportunity to have that double-digit touchdown season. And then kind of like looking back at last year, we had an example of most of these things breaking right for Gus Edwards. Like you hope for him to have a bunch of touchdowns and consolidate the rushing work. He didn't really consolidate a ton of the rushing work. He like handled, I think it was 40% of the team's rush attempts, but that considers like Lamar Jackson handling a bunch of the work. But it was still 200 touches, combined receptions and rush attempts. I don't really think there's a ton of room for improvement there. Like he will definitely see more. But like what's the ceiling? Like 230 rush attempts for Gus Edwards. So, but like what I was kind of getting to, we've seen kind of the positive outlook play out last season. He got a bunch of looks at the goal line. He got 13 touchdowns and he got 200 rush attempts. So he got a bunch of work and got the goal line work. And he was still the RB 32 in points per game last season. So I just don't see, like, even if things break right, like I've continually said, consolidating the rushing work and getting goal line looks, like we've seen those things happen for him to a degree, and he's still the RB 32. And then one other thing that I want to note, like just how dependent he is, given his lack of usage as a receiver, how dependent he is on finding the goal line or finding the end zone. Gus Edwards, in games where he did not find the end zone, his season high in games where he did not find the end zone was 6.9 PPR points. He never even cracked double digits in PPR points in games where he did not find the end zone. So that's just concerning, just because fundamentally I just don't, like, to the level that the Ravens provided him with opportunities to score, I just don't think that the Chargers will approach that. I mean, it was one of the best offenses in the league last year, and they provided him with ample opportunities to score. And I don't know if the Chargers will do that. I'm hesitant on that outcome in terms of just having the opportunity to score 10 plus touchdowns. And like I said, 6.9 PPR points in games where he did not, or maximum of 6.9 PPR points in games where he did not find the end zone. So I don't know. It seems like we had a lot of these positive aspects play out last year, and it was still a pretty pedestrian season. And I understand the picture that, like, the picture you're painting for where it works out. I am not that artist behind that picture, though.
I'll keep painting my Picasso then here with Gus Edwards. I come to the fact that I totally agree with you in the sense that he requires consolidated rushing work, and in most offenses, will Gus Edwards deserve the consolidated rushing workload? No, I think it's probably 28 of the offenses in the NFL I could point at and say, yeah, Gus Edwards should probably lead this backfield, maybe less than that. And yet the Chargers are the one that are at the top of that list because Achilles, JK Dobbins, and Kimani Vidal, round 6 rookie. I think the run game is always going to be great in a Greg Roman scheme. And even if Gus Edwards isn't incredible, again, 5 yards per carry every single year he's been with Greg Roman. If he gets 230 carries like you mentioned, if he averages what he's always averaging in a Greg Roman scheme, we're looking at 1,200-ish yards. That would certainly balance out that touchdown dependency just a little bit here at minimum. And I know the touchdown opportunities probably won't be quite as high, but I just want to reemphasize the fact that, again, all of Jim Harbaugh's years with Greg Roman, top 11 in points. And Greg Roman himself, top 12 in 7 of 10 years in touchdowns total with those Ravens. He had that historic most points in the NFL ever season. And that was crazy. That was Lamar Jackson. But what if Justin Herbert does put it all together? I'd feel a little bit less optimistic if it wasn't Herbert, a quarterback. I believe in the arm talent. But with this good line, with Harbaugh, with this identity, I just see 250-ish carries. I see a very efficient runner in a scheme that he's thrived. And I think the touchdown opportunities are being discounted because everyone thinks of it as just this gross run-heavy attack. But again, top 12 in 7 of 10 years in total touchdowns as an offense. It might not be 18 touchdowns, but I do think there's upside for 12, 13, and 1,000-plus rush yards. And we're talking, again, pick 120 right now. I don't see much in that range that could truly lead a backfield that promises to be one of the best in the NFL. I love it. I cannot get enough of Gus Edwards. I know it sounds so ugly, and there's so many reasons to be against it, but I'm in. I'm all the way in, clearly.
And yeah, it's not like a full fade type of deal for me, but I don't know, like just the total 0 as a pass catcher, and like
I'll say this though, total 0. I get it in terms of he's never really been used. The 2 seasons he had more than 10 targets, which now we're hyping up seasons with at least 10 targets. I know how pathetic that is. But he averaged 14.3 and 15 yards per reception in those 2 years. So is it a matter of inability or just a lack of usage? I get it. If he was so good, he'd be used more often. But the few opportunities, the few times he's had a chance, that's not bad yards per reception, 14.5 and 15. But he's had some flashes on screens. I don't know. I think there's a little bit of an untapped ceiling here.
at that small of a sample size, it's completely skewed by, like, I just anecdotally remember him just ripping off 1 yard. Or 1 reception, and it was like 25 yards. I was like, oh, that's got to be Gus Edwards' longest reception of his career. And I would not be shocked if it was. Like the yards per reception stuff, like very big time skewed by that small sample size. But yeah, I think it just comes down to you kind of fundamentally believe to a larger degree that Gus Edwards is, or the Chargers offense will provide more scoring opportunities than I do. And like you said, like it's historically speaking, Roman has been able to do that. So it could end up playing out in Gus Edwards' favor. I don't know.
I think he works great too in, like, if you're doing a 0 RB build and you've loaded up on receivers, which you probably should be either hero or 0 running back, at least in these best ball drafts, it is a guy that's going to get in your lineup at minimum 6 to 7 times when he scores that touchdown. He's going to be there. He's going to have at least 10 to 12 points, and then some weeks where he scores 2 and he's getting you 18 to 20. I think that's the floor. And at 120 on a 0 running back build, I think it's worth considering. So we shall see. That's enough Gus Edwards talk for all of your afternoons. What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.